Hey guys, so I've had a couple people that know me personally ask me how I could possibly work in education being the more introverted person that I am, because regardless of what you see on my channel, I am actually much more reserved and introverted and honestly almost bordering on shy, especially when I meet new people. Um, I just kind of let my personality shine throughout my channel, but in real life I am more of an introverted person. And obviously working in education, people think that everybody who is an educator needs to be super extroverted, and that's really not true. So I pulled up some tips for introverts who are working in education on my phone, and I will say that the tips that I found are more geared towards people that are actually teaching a class, but I think that this could be true for paraprofessionals as well, because a lot of teaching strategies and stuff are very helpful for someone working as a paraprofessional, because we do teach. We are educators, we are considered educators. You know, I do a lot of teaching throughout the day and helping my students learn the information that their main teacher or our lead special ed teacher may be trying to get across to them, but I help facilitate the process. So just trying to say that. So one tip is to involve students more directly in the educational process. So like I said, if you are leading a class, whether that be you're leading carpet time, where you're talking about the weather, or doing the calendar, learning the days of the week, talking about the alphabet, numbers, whatever it is that you're teaching, involve your students more directly in the educational process. And I am looking down because, again, I do have these notes written down. So one thing that you can do, like I said, is by involving students, you could delegate some of the responsibilities to your students. So you could put a student in charge of a group activity. You could let them lead while you observe and offer your advice or insights, kind of facilitating the discussion between the group, or facilitating the learning process. But I also think it also teaches your students how to be facilitators themselves. It teaches them how to work together better, and it develops different skills. Another tactic to involve students is to ask them open-ended questions that require a discussion. So if you are asking something that requires, more than just a yes or no answer, and can actually create a discussion within the class between more than just you and the other student, you know, it makes the class more student-centered than just teacher-centered. Because, like I said, teachers or paras should be facilitators rather than just, giving information to the student. It lightens the load for someone who's an introvert, who may not necessarily be super comfortable about always talking in front of the class, always giving your students information. Letting them kind of lead discussions sometimes gives you a break. And it also makes your class more interesting, because if students know that they might get the chance to lead a small group or lead a discussion in the class, that might excite them to come to your class, or to work with you in general. Another thing is to create decompression spaces for yourself, whether you are at school or in transit. And the article that I found actually talked about teachers or school staff who, on their breaks, they might go into the teacher's lounge, where there's a discussion going on between other staff members. And as an introvert, you might not want to always be talking. So one of the ways that you can do that is maybe find a quiet space. If you have a space in your classroom, or a space in another classroom, or a different room, somewhere that you're able to sit and kind of just mellow out and be with your own thoughts, and not necessarily have to carry on a conversation with a bunch of other staff members, that is good for you too. Because sometimes as an introvert, constantly feeling the need to have discussions and carry on conversations with other people, it can be overwhelming. So you need to make sure that you're finding time for yourself to just kind of like decompress and relax. Another thing is don't overcommit. And by that, like a lot of staff members who may be introverts kind of feel bad about the fact that they're introverts. Not that there's anything wrong with being an introvert, but because of that, they feel like they're failing the students in some way or not doing enough. And so they might try to overcompensate for that by coaching or being an advisor for extracurricular activities and things like that. But if you don't feel like that would be a good decision for you, don't overcommit to it. Whether you're being a coach or organizing an event or a chaperone or whatever, if you feel like it's going to put more stress on you than you need, don't do it. Don't feel pressured into it. I get like why you would be feeling the need to, but don't do it. It makes it worse. If you find an activity like an extracurricular, say you're super excited about like, I don't know, chess, and they're looking for somebody to help with a chess club or something, and it's something that you really love and you would be able to share your passion with the students, then definitely consider it if that's something that you would love. But obviously, if it's something that you enjoy, then that wouldn't be as burdensome as, like, say, if you like chess and they're looking for a basketball coach and you don't like basketball. Don't commit to things like that. Another thing is to make use of digital communication whenever possible. So that is more for like communicating with your coworkers or with your students' parents or, other staff within the building. And obviously, digital communication makes it so that you don't necessarily have to talk to someone face to face all the time. You don't necessarily have to pick up the phone and call somebody all the time. It can be as simple as facilitating communication through email or other messaging apps. I know the school that I work for, they have different like rooms through our grading system where the parents can actually communicate with teachers through those rooms. So yeah, whether it's, messaging apps, email, whatever, that can be easier. Another thing is to be open and honest about the fact that you are introverted with other teachers as well as administrators. I think this is important because sometimes people might feel like you're trying to just brush them off or that you're not really engaging with them. And if they know that you're an introvert and, you're open and honest about that, then they may be a little bit more understanding. They might not be so like put off if you're like, hey, I need some time to just like decompress. I need some time to myself and some quiet space. They might not be offended. Like I have known at other jobs of people who have gotten offended because like I would leave out of the break room and not really say anything to them because I just needed like a quiet space to calm down and like relax before I went back to work. So, obviously if you're open and honest, like, especially if you're somebody who has anxiety or just kind of needs to, like I said, decompress, they will be more understanding if you are open and honest. Another option may be investigating jobs where you could teach online or in a smaller school or a private school or a charter school, something like that, where you have maybe a less student to teacher ratio. So like charter schools, especially, at least the ones in the area that I live in, they tend to have a much smaller teacher to student ratio. And so if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily feel like you can handle like 20 kids or however many end up in your classroom, then maybe look into, like I said, teaching online or working at a charter school or whatever the case may be. There are a lot more opportunities for stuff like that now, especially with COVID. Like you could work for something like K-12. They have a lot of different online schools and things like that. Even like colleges, high schools, elementary schools. I've even seen preschools online. It's weird. Um, Another thing is to embrace the fact that you are an introvert as a positive characteristic. You can't, try to change your personality, and introversion is part of your personality. Um, it's just who you are. And so I think if you embrace the fact that you're introverted and you view it from a more positive aspect instead of as a negative thing, then, it'll be a lot easier for you to function throughout your daily life. Um, Obviously, you want to ensure that you're teaching the content that you're supposed to be teaching well and in a way that your students are able to understand and engage with. But trying to change your personality into something it isn't is not going to help with that process. So the last tip would be to be yourself and be a great teacher. Um, you know, a lot of people think that, like I said, introverts are not suitable for a teaching career, but that's a stereotype. And honestly, you being who you are might also encourage some of your students to pursue the things that they want to do. Maybe you have a quieter or more shy student who notices that, hey, she's a teacher, so I can be a teacher, or whatever the case may be. I just think it's important to be yourself and not try to put on a performance or put on a show when you're in the classroom just to try to look like a better teacher, because you being yourself and who you are is definitely going to make your teaching and your students' experience in your classroom a much better experience. So like I said, these tips were more focused on like teaching or running a classroom as compared to like paraprofessionals, where we don't necessarily always run a classroom. Like there have been times where myself and another paraprofessional have run like small groups in our classroom, or we have ran the whole classroom, but that's not always the case. But I do think that there are ways that you could take these tips and implement them with your position, just kind of dependent on what your job duties are. So anyways, I hope this was helpful. If you guys have any questions about working in education, working in special education, working as a paraprofessional, working as a CNA, phlebotomist, medical assistant, or any questions about my pre-med journey, please feel free to ask. I would be glad to get something filmed for you. And with that being said, I will talk to you guys next time.